algebraic ways. So ways in which you don't have to graph, you don't have to have a computer. These are algebraic ways. So these are ways that you can manipulate the equations and still get the same correct answer. And so previously we learned how to solve a system of equations by graphing. Today we learn how to solve a system of equations by substitution. Now this isn't the only way. There still is a whole nother way called elimination, and we will get to that next week. So our first steps that we have in solving by substitution. Step 1, when necessary, solve at least one equation for one variable, and we'll talk about that. Step 2, substitute the resulting expression from step 1 into the other equation to replace the variable. Then solve the equation. And then step 3, substitute the value from step 2 into either equation and solve for the other variable. Write the solution as an ordered pair. This here is key. Your answer is an ordered pair. The reason why it's an ordered pair is because of what we learned when we graphed the equations. Okay? When we graphed the equations, they intersected, remember? And what were the 3 different types of answers we could have? Yeah, infinitely many, which was like all real numbers. What was another one? No solution. And what was the other one?
Exactly one.
Just exactly one solution. So you can still get all 3 of those as well. And so let's go ahead and jump right in with an example. This first one says use substitution to solve the system of equations. And so step 1 is to solve one of the equations for a variable. And if you look, my first equation here is already solved for what? Y. So that's good. So that's step 1. We want one of the equations to be solved for one variable. It doesn't always have to be y. It could be x as well. Now what I'm going to do then is I'm going to take that value and I'm going to replace y in the second equation with 2x plus 1. Okay. So what I'm doing is I've got my 3x, and then in place of y, I know that y up here equals 2x plus 1. So I'm going to replace y with 2x plus 1. And then the rest of the equation is equals -9. Now what I need to do is I just need to solve that for x. So the first step is to combine some like terms. So 3x and 2x is, so I have 5x plus 1 equals -9. To solve that for x, what do you do now? Subtract 1. So I get 5x to equal -10. Now what do I do? Divide by 5, very good. And I get x to equal -2. And so now what I'm going to do, if you remember, I need an ordered pair. I've got 1/2 of the ordered pair. Now I need to find the other half. So I'm going to come up to that highlighted equation at the very top. And I'm going to plug in -2 right here for x. Okay? So I've got 2 times -2 plus 1. What is 2 times -2? Okay, plus 1. And so what is -4 plus 1? -3. So that is what y equals. Now if you remember, the final step is to answer that as an ordered pair. What would my answer be? It's -2, -3, because remember, an ordered pair is an x and a y. And so my x is -2, my y is -3. So what this means is that if you were to graph these 2 lines, either by hand or using the computer, you are going to get those 2 lines to intersect at -2, -3. Okay, let's look at another one. So y equals 4x minus 6, and I have 5x plus 3y equals 1. Now, our first step is to solve for a variable. Do I have one equation that's already solved for a variable? Yeah. Yep. And what equation is that? The top equation. And so now what I'm going to do is go to the bottom equation. And in place of y, right here, I am now going to put what? 4x minus 6. Very good. Now notice I'm going to leave that 3 outside. I'm going to put the 4x minus 6 in parentheses. And so now what I need to do is I need to go ahead and distribute that 3. And when I distribute that 3, what do I get? Okay. Let's go ahead and add like terms together on the left side. And what do I get? 17x. Perfect. What do you do now? Add 18. Nice job. And so I get 17x to equal 17. What do you do now? Divide by 17 and x equals 1. So now I'm going to go back up to that first equation. And I'm going to plug in, for x, I'm going to plug in 1. So I have 4 times 1 minus 6. What is 4 times 1? 4. Minus 6 is negative 2. So what does my ordered pair look like? Negative 2. Good job. Questions? A little bit faster than graphing. So with that in mind, here you go. All I want you to do here is find the value of x. We are not finding the whole ordered pair. I just want you to tell me what is the value of x. I just want the x. So that's going to be the first thing that you find. And so I want you to go ahead and type in the answer. You will eventually find y. But for this first thing, I want you to do is find x. When you get the answer, I want you to go ahead and type it in to your expression. Great, and then the answer is -3. Nice job. Okay, and so then now what we're going to do, let's look at the next slide. Okay, the next slide now says find the value of y. So what I want you to do is I want you to go ahead And you've already found the value of x. Everybody got it correct. It was -3. I want you to now find the value of y. This one is different because this says find the value of y. So I want you to find the second part. So take that -3 that you found and now plug it in and tell me what y is. And the answer is 1. Okay, because when you plug that in, what you go ahead and do is you go ahead and end up with 3 times -3 plus 10, which is -9 plus 10, which is 1. So really your ordered pair on that one would be -3, 1. Let's look at another one. Oh, x plus 2y equals 6. And 3x minus 4y equals 28. Now what's wrong with this system of equations? They don't have one of the variables solved for. So what we're going to need to do is do that. And so this is the thing you're looking for. You are looking for a variable that's just an x or a y. So do you have a variable that's just an x or a y? The top one. So in the first equation, I've got x right here. So what I'm going to want to do is solve that equation for x, very similar to what you did yesterday when we did the graphing. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to subtract 2y from each side. So when I do that, I get x to equal what? Okay, so you could have -2y plus 6. You could also write that as 6 minus 2y. It doesn't matter. So now I'm going to look at the second equation. And the second equation is 3x minus 4y equals 28. This is solved for x. So I'm going to substitute in that value for x.
Could you subtract the x and then figure out the y?
You have to divide by 2. That's the only problem. So it gets kind of messy. So I'm going to take 3 times what? -2y plus 6. And then I'm going to subtract 4y. And that will equal 28. What do you do now? Yep, distribute. Good call. And I get -6y plus, yep, good, equals 28. What should you do now? Get the y's together, and that gives me -10y plus 18 equals 28. Next step. Subtract 18, very good. And so I get negative 10y to equal 10. Final step is to do what? Divide by negative 10. And so y equals negative 1. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to that equation up here that I substituted in. And I'm going to plug in negative 1 right here. Okay? So I end up getting negative 2 times negative 1 plus 6. What is negative 2 times negative 1? Plus 6 is 8. So my ordered pair, remember, is x comma y. What is the x? What is the y? There you go. That is your solution. So with that in mind, I'm going to help you get started on this one. And then what I want you to do is I want you to find the value of x. So, what variable do you think you're going to solve for? Well, I mean, yeah, what variable are you going to start with to substitute in? The y, because it's all by itself. Okay, so what are you going to do to get the y all by itself? You're going to add 3x to both sides. So this equation now becomes y equals what? 3x minus 13. So now what you're going to do is you're going to solve that the exact same way that we just got done looking at. So take that 3x minus 13, plug it in for y. When you get your answer, I want you to go ahead and enter it in on your expression, and all I want is the value of x for this one. So our answer is 4. Nice job. So that is what our x is. And so now what I need you to do is I need you to do the second step and find the y. So remember, once you find that x, you have to plug that back in and find what y is. Okay, so the answer is -1. So how did we get -1? Because this was our equation, 3x minus 13, right? And so all I'm doing is plugging 4 in for x. So I have 3 times 4, which is 12, minus 13, which is -1. So my ordered pair, if I was going to solve that, would be 4, -1. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at another one. Y equals 2x minus 4, and negative 6x plus 3y equals -12. So what am I going to do? Use the top equation, and where am I going to substitute that? And for the y down below. So I have negative 6x plus 3 times 2x minus 4, and that's going to equal -12. What do you do now? Distribute. So I get negative 6x plus, what do I get here? 6x minus equals -12. What happens to your 6x's when you combine like terms? 0, right? And so what am I left with on that side? -12 equals -12. Is that a true statement? Does -12 equal -12? If it does, your answer is infinitely many solutions. Yep, IMS you can write. Infinitely many solutions. Now, what do you think would have happened if that wouldn't have been a true statement? It would have been a no solution. So, the only time you can get infinitely many or no solution is when you get a statement like this. You can't do anything to it because there's no variables. Alrighty, we're going to look at one more. We'll call it good for today. 2x minus y equals 8, and y equals 2x minus 3. So what are we going to do? Yep, use the bottom one, and we're going to substitute it into the top one. Now this one we need to be really careful because it's got a minus sign. So I'm going to subtract 2x minus 3, and that's going to equal 8. Now notice how I put parentheses. What do you think we're going to have to do with that negative sign? Yeah, we're going to have to distribute that into each of these. So that's going to make this one negative, and it'll make the negative 3 positive. So basically I have 2x plus negative 2x plus 3, and that equals 8. So what do you get on the left side? 3, because your 2x's cancel, equals 8. This is a no solution. Okay? Questions? Okay, then what I have to look at is one last real quick word problem. Okay, and this will be somewhat similar on your homework. The sum of the measures of angles x and y is 180. Okay, the measure of angle x is 24 degrees greater than the measure of angle y. Write equations for the situation, find the measure of angle x. So let's do the sum of the measures of angles x and y is 180. What would be an equation for that?
X plus y equals 180.
X plus y equals 180. Very good. Now let's look at the next statement. The measure of angle x is, so I know x is, x equals, okay, 24 degrees greater than the measure of angle y. How could I write 24 degrees greater than the measure of angle y?
24 plus
24 plus y. So this is all set up. It says find the measure of angle x. So what am I going to do now? I'm going to substitute this in for
1.
x. So what do I have? I have 24 plus y equals 180. What is y plus y? 2y. Okay. So what do you do now? Subtract 24. Very good. And so I get 2y to equal 156. So what do you get y to equal? 78. Now what I want you to do, I want you to tell me what the measure of angle x is. Okay? So now what I have to do is I have to take that angle y and I have to plug it back in.
Wait, so we do like x plus 78 equals 80?
You wouldn't even need to do that. I would look back at the circle equation. I would look back at the circled equation, guys. Okay, your answer should be 102 because all you're doing is you're going back to the circle equation and you're plugging in 78 for y. So 24 plus 78 is 102. So this is what you need to do on page 347. You need to do 8 through 24. Okay, page 347, 8 through 24, and this is for Monday.